Hello, hello. Happy Friday, everybody. I am Manila Chan. That over there is Ted Rall. You are tuned in to the Ted Manila Information Show, or TMI Show for short, if you like, where we do bring you too much information. Again, if you're looking for a straight-laced, button-down show, this ain't it. This ain't it. So we are live Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern. So please be sure to like and follow this show wherever you are consuming this content. Please tell the algorithms that you like us, so that way our show can be introduced to others. Because we are a fledgling show and we have no startup capital, and and it's just us. It's just us, Ted, Manila, and producer Robbie, doing it from our own dime and whatever donations that our wonderful listeners and viewers can share with us. That's how this whole thing is done. So if there are more people like that, that'll keep the program alive. I think that's pretty fair to say, right, Ted?
I think that is fair to say.
Yeah, because we're seriously talking about, I don't know how much longer we have on this, platform, because we might have to go get real jobs soon.
That would suck.
Like real jobs. That would suck.
Assuming we could even find one.
I know. In media, I can already tell you, Ted, we've got the Russian stench on us.
Yeah, not to mention, look, honestly, you could have a Pulitzer Prize and have worked at the New York Times for the last 20 years. There's no work. Yeah, they're like Chris Hedges. Yeah. Although ideologically he has the stench of caring about genocide, and that counts against you.
That doesn't work either. You can't do that.
It's a very bad model. Yeah, don't care about genocide.
Yeah, you gotta. Yeah, this whole media apparatus is really effed. So my backup plan for many people that have followed me for a long time do know that I have a background in real estate, so that I might go back to the private sector and do that, because I really do enjoy real estate. I really enjoy doing I haven't done it, I should say, but I really enjoy those house flipping shows. And theoretically, if I had that kind of money, I would flip houses. I actually really I'm really into that. I love real estate. I really enjoy it. I love the housing sector. Don't know why. It's just something I've always liked. And
it's your kink.
I guess so. It's so sexy. I would fall back onto real estate, because that's exactly what I did when I came back from the Middle East. And so that was end of 2010. We were in the throes of recession at that time, right? The housing bust. Maybe it wasn't a recession, but it was a housing bust in 2010.
What year?
2010.
Oh yeah, no, are you kidding? That was a recession. It was following the 2008-2009 subprime mortgage meltdown. The economy sucked hard. Yeah.
There was no jobs for journalists at the time.
Well, that's just been for 30 years. Yeah.
That's true. It's less and less, but that's how I wound up in real estate, because I thought, well, you know what? Everybody's jumping out of real estate. I'm going to jump into it. I'm going to run headfirst into it and learn all I could. And I learned about, these foreclosure sales and underwater properties. And also I became very good, very, very deft in those areas of real estate. And I could see myself falling back on that and being pretty satisfied. It's just that journalism is my heart, right? So that's what I went to do.
Well, the real estate market is also kind of frozen up right now too. So yeah. I don't know if I'd be very optimistic about that.
Well, it's still, I still want to do something
not as bad as journalism. Yeah, no, that's true. If you do something you like, you're likely to work harder and be better at it.
Yeah. So that's the other thing I like. So I could foresee myself going back to that, because, there's no place in mainstream media for people like you and I, Ted. That's the reality.
No, that's true. No, they don't want us. I mean, they do not want, and it's all about point of view. I mean, for sure. I mean, if we were just like sort of generic corporate Democrats, probably have no problem,
Oh, for sure. No problem.
I mean, it would still be challenging, but I think we'd be okay. Yeah. You and I would be okay.
Yeah, it's just who we are, our beliefs, and we espouse them, and also who we work for. The combination of those two is like
Right.
it,
Right.
it is a lethal.
But I love that. I mean, it's
media.
sort of like these same people, these bastards, they won't hire you, but then they're mad at you because you go to work for someone who will hire you. And then they're like, well, we won't hire you because you worked for the places that we weren't going to hire you, but now we really won't hire you because you went to work for places that would hire you. Give me a break.
Yes. Yeah, this is it's a vicious cycle, the media, the media world. And look, Tucker Carlson's been saying it for the last like 5 years that this industry is in a tailspin, and it's in its final death throes, right?
Well,
it's
I don't need Tucker Carlson to tell me which way the wind blows. It's obvious,
It's so obvious. But if there's a voice reaching the masses, it would be Tucker Carlson. And he's even appealed to other people that'd be more centrist and maybe non-establishment types. Whereas before I would consider him strictly a right winger. And now he's reaching other people, that are outside of the GOP conservative right.
Mm-hmm.
And he's told that to the masses, and now they understand that the mainstream media is dead. They lie, and they won't have people that tell you the truth. Corporate media is dead. It's dead, and now it's for good and bad. Ted, it's diversified all over the interwebs, but making a living out of it is hard.
It is. True.
It is very hard. So, and you have to have a lot of startup capital in order to play the game, to fudge with the algorithms. So that's where Ted and I are at. So that's just trust us when we say. I know you should never tell people like trust me, because that's when people don't trust you. But but seriously, how this streaming game, the world of streaming works, is you really have to have a lot of buy-in startup capital, because there's all these little things you can do to fudge with algorithms on YouTube and Rumble and wherever to get yourself catapulted to the front of the queue so people can find you. But that requires a lot of startup capital, which Ted and I are not in the position to do, because we are not,
rich is the word.
Rachel Maddow rich.
Right.
That's a special kind of rich, Ted. You work.
It's funny that you should bring her up. I mean, she's rich. She has tens of millions of dollars. She could leave as MSNBC and decide to go, the Tucker Carlson route, and she could return if she wanted to, to the politics that she actually believes in. And
you really don't think she believes what she's saying, what she spews right now on MSNBC?
I mean, obviously, I don't know, but she didn't.
I mean, you knew her back in the day.
She didn't used to believe any of this stuff, and I don't think she. Look, I mean, she's too intelligent to believe some of this crap, about Trump is a Russian agent. Okay, that kind of thing. There's just no way you can't have a brain, an IQ over room temperature and believe that that's true. It's just not possible. It's like there's literally no evidence to support it at all.
I agree. But after, when you spew bullshit for long enough, Ted, sometimes you start believing it.
No, that's true. No, that's true. And I do. So that's why I'm saying I don't really know. It's possible that she just believes it, and she's been, in the Borg for so long that's it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So Ted and I are trying. We're clinging to keeping this show going.
Yeah, and towards that end, I have coined a new word that last night. Remember, we introduced the sheeness yesterday.
Oh God, yes.
And okay, but that turned out, I thought I had invented that, but it turned out it had been pre-invented. However, I now think I have a word.
It's a thing?
It's a real thing. I mean, I don't know how often it's used.
That's not my world, so
the word. But anyway, the sheeness, for people who missed yesterday's episode, is the penis that a trans woman has, is in some cases, if she hasn't had gender affirming surgery. Okay. Right. So anyway, I was thinking also there should be a word for her other bits, or sorry, his other bits. Broveries.
But how?
Broveries.
If you don't have ovaries to begin with, you can't.
No, you have ovaries.
Up...
You're male. You're female to male. So you're trans men.
The other way.
The other way. So you have broveries.
Oh. That's pretty good.
Thank you.
I like that.
I want to make broveries. I want broveries to become a thing. I have more of these, by the way. I'm really rolling them out one day at a time.
Do you know, I tried, okay, we're past the 10-minute mark.
TMI Show has introduced broveries, has unleashed broveries to an unsuspecting and unready world.
I like that, Ted. You know, I tried to propagate, I tried to take with me to the Middle East, and they really weren't into it, but I tried to propagate the word explosion.
Well, that's self-explanatory. Yeah, I've been guilty of that in Mexico.
You know exactly what I mean. Exactly.
Yes.
You know exactly what I mean when I say an explosion.
I was traveling in Mexico with my erstwhile wife, and I went to use the bathroom first because it was urgent. And then she's like, "Oh, I'm going to go next." And I said, "You do not want to go in there. I have committed a terrible crime." And
that's well, because I've talked about, you know, like my personal on my Friday podcast, I've talked about like my health stuff.
Robbie wants to be popped on. I don't know if he wants to comment on the brovery, Madame Brovery,
producer robbery.
Yeah, no, I mean, those people are just women cosplaying as guys. No, I have no interest in that. No, this is just a call of action, especially for those of you on YouTube. So I really need y'all's help right now. So for those of you who are watching, please share the stream. And if you have multiple YouTube accounts, because let's be honest, we know you do, go ahead and subscribe with all of them. Because basically what the goal is right now, Manila and Ted, they are paying for the streaming software, everything you're seeing. I need to try and get this thing to be at least cost neutral. I can produce the content. I can put it out there for you, but I cannot make you share it. I cannot make you like it, and I cannot make you support the show. If you want this to continue happening, it is incumbent on you to do your part. I'm not trying to be a dick. I'm just being honest. This is some tough love.
Being a producer, right, that's a producer right there.
That's true.
So
appreciate it, Robbie.
So let me tell y'all, those of you on Rumble, y'all know I love Rumble. Rumble fucks you. I just dropped the F-bomb because I'm pissed when it comes to ad revenue. Rumble, the way that, so whenever you watch your videos on Rumble, when you get the ads, that goes through Google AdSense. So Google gets their pound of meat. Then Rumble gets their commission. Then the creator gets whatever's left, which is literally pennies for every ad view that you see. Like on my Putinbot gaming channel, I make maybe $20 a month on ad revenue, and I get around 10,000 views, which is a complete joke. That's the reality of Rumble. YouTube pays significantly better. However, you've got to have 1,000 subscribers on YouTube to see a penny of it. Mm-hmm. That is why I need you, if you're watching this, subscribe using all of your channels, share the damn stream. It costs you nothing. And if you want this show to continue happening, there is a follow button that's there up under this video. Click follow. You have 3 different options where you can contribute. Manila and Ted pay for everything, and they don't have a job right now. If y'all want this to happen, do your fucking part and help. That's all I got for you.
Whoa.
Thank you, producer Robbie.
Thank you, Robbie. Tough love.
Well,
the toughest of love.
Okay, the toughest. But yeah, those are the facts on the ground. And that's kind of where we're at. You know, as like Ted and I were saying yesterday, drawing near our 100 shows, we knew that this was a gamble we were making, and hoping that maybe we could break through the organic way without cheating like a lot of people do. But you can't. We've realized you cannot play the game if everyone else is cheating. Like right. You can't come out on top the honest way when all the other content creators are cheating the system.
Well, and that's true. And they are. So
so
no, I mean, there was and I'll just name names. there's a internet comic. It's probably still around, called The Oatmeal. And
I remember that.
And so that was a massive, like, a lot of us in the world of cartooning were completely mystified. Are you all right? All right. Totally mystified about, like, how it was, like, you know, getting millions of dollars in, like, in clicks and everything. And it turned out that the creator of the strip was like, it's okay, but it was no funnier or better or, you know, than any other more mainstream comic. And, you know, and cartoonists were like, what has this guy figured out? And it turns out he was a big SEO cheat. He had all sorts of, he wasn't really a cartoonist. He was really a coder. And he figured out how to, like, put in, like, you know, sex, large breasts, fucking, and all this stuff, like, embedded in the code of the cartoons. So because the internet loves porn, it bopped these non-porn cartoons way up to the top of the algorithm searches. So they came up, like, really high. It's actually really brilliant. It is a
no, it is, but
you're
that's
not supposed
what happened?
to. You're not supposed to do that. But basically, he got to the point. It was really crazy. Like, he got so big that he was able to finance with either a GoFundMe or I think it was a Kickstarter, and he got like $1.2 million from his supporters just to print a cartoon collection. Now, most people who print a cartoon collection, professional cartoonists, they get like $5,000. So, I mean, it's like totally just like, it was insane. So yeah, people cheat, they game the system, and really the tech bros who run Silicon Valley don't care. They don't enforce anything.
Of course not.
So,
of course not, because they're still making money hand over fist anyways. So, you know, there's a gajillion people that want to live stream, you know, them getting up in the morning, having an ass-splosion, still trying to propagate that 17 years later.
Yeah, no, I'm surprised ass-splosion never. Well, I mean, it's really a travel thing, right? It's Montezuma's revenge. Happens a lot, you know?
Yeah, more so traveling. More so, especially if you're going to.
I don't know why it gets so explosive that way.
I don't know.
Maybe do you think it has to do with like flying? So your contents are under pressure?
No, because Ted, when I was a traveling print journalist, like in my late 20s, I traveled all the time. I was in and out of the Middle East, in and out of Europe, and that didn't happen. It's only when you go, like, it would happen. Let's say if I took a road trip to Oman, like,
yeah, I've been to Oman.
Like, we're cruising into Yemen, right? Like, then you know, the explosions come. It's specific to like second and third world countries, I think.
Oh, really?
I think so. That's at least from my experience. Because look, I was in Iceland. There was no explosion. I did not explode on the mountainside. It was just a pee. It was just a pee-pee. Which I imagine when you're hiking through a mountain with no proper toilet, that millions of people a year, or at least, okay, thousands of people a year take a pee-pee on the side of this mountain. They have to. They have to. I refuse to believe I'm the only one.
Well, let me tell you a third world story. So I was on the bus from Western China, Xinjiang province, into Kazakhstan. And it was a 4-day bus ride from hell on one of these old Chinese communist buses that probably don't exist anymore. That like where the floorboards, half of them were missing. There's like the Flintstones. You could see the street below, and all the fumes would come up inside the bus, and you're covered with like soot and like sand, and you know, and it's kind of like it's like a Nazi gassing vehicle, right? Like in the early days of the Holocaust. And anyway, so the point is you're banging around in the mountains on these like horrible roads. I'm sure those are all paved now. And
sure. And
it was like, anyway, so we stopped for a pee break. Everybody's constantly having to pee and poo. And it's like it's a chalet, like a house in the mountains. And we walk, and it's open, and it's like a suburban house. There's like wall-to-wall carpeting, there's furniture, and it's very clear that people have pissed and shat all over the house, like up and down the stairs, like in the kitchen, like on the floor. And the bus driver is like, gestures like, here you go. I'm like, I'm not going in there. I went behind, and into the woods behind a tree. But like all these other people from the bus, they're inside dropping trout.
Why?
So that's what I wanted to know. I'm a journalist. So I asked the bus driver, so whose house is this? And he's like, this house belongs to the guy who's been fucking my wife. It's his summer place. Surprise!
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder how that house is doing now. But anyway, we should
that
probably.
That guy needs Surf Pro in a big way.
That's amazing.
Like
what an amazing. That's an amazing story. But
it was like, so I remember with my friend who I was traveling with, Alan, I'm like, it's das Scheißhaus. It's literally the shit house.
It's the Scheißer house. Gross.
Yeah.
Gross.
Yeah, but it's a place where you can show your broveries or your sheeness to anyone.
Or your sheeness, and everyone's fine with it.
Yeah.
Hard pass.
Where everybody knows your name.
Side of the mountain. It's fine. Right. It's fine. All right. So with that, enough.
Come on, don't you want to support this? Don't you want us to keep doing this? Come on, you do. Where else are you going to get this? You're going to get this on Rachel Maddow? Niet.
I don't think so.
Niet. No Scheiß house.
Hard niet on that.
No. I promise. I have a lot more of these stories. I will do more of these stories.
Before we get to headline news, we got to answer Juan Don's donation question.
From yesterday. Yeah. We're sorry.
From yesterday. We're sorry. We missed your question. It somehow just scrolled past because sometimes, the Rumble chat moves so quickly.
I blame Clovis.
We can't see it. But Juan Don yesterday gave a donation and asked a question that he said, presuming it's a he, what's it going to take to broaden Americans' perspectives about the world? That's not a hard question at all. That's an easy. That's a softball. Yeah.
Wait, so say that again?
What's it going to take to broaden Americans' perspectives about the world? Because, we Americans tend to think the world revolves around us. Like we are the sun and everything revolves around America. So I've thought about this before many times. And I hope I'm paraphrasing Wandon's question correctly. But I would say that I would attribute much of the answer I'm about to give to Noam Chomsky and what's his co-writer's name? Edward S. Herman for Manufacturing Consent. And it started, I would say, 50-ish years ago, the slow media decline, which we were just talking about at the top of the program, the slow and insidious kind of planting the seed within the American population now, I would say into its fourth generation of American exceptionalism, and that America, again, we are the sun and every other country revolves around the United States. And that, I would say, may have been true in the early to latter parts of the 20th century. But in the meantime, especially as we bridged over into the 21st century, these once upon a time third world countries, such as China, have really grown. They've developed. They went through puberty, right, in those 20 or 30 years. The Russians, after the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, they went through a few years of struggle, and before you knew it, they're now in the top 15 economies of the world, right? When they were literally like shit in our lifetimes, Ted, like 30-ish years ago. So in those past 30 years, America still believed in the media representation. Americans, I should say, believed in the media representation of the 1960s post World War II, the June Cleaver, the Leave It to Beaver life. We thought we had the life. We thought we everybody wanted to be like us. We were the healthiest. We had the best healthcare. We had the best college system. We had everything, everything, everything. The streets are paved in gold. The rivers are full of milk and honey. And the world bought it because we owned Hollywood. We owned movies. We propagated this American propaganda all over the world. And everybody believed it. Everybody, not just Americans. We drank our own Kool-Aid, but then we gave it to the rest of the world and they all drank it. This is fucking Jonestown, right? Like everybody just believed it. But little by little, that facade that veneer has chipped away with the advent of social media. I hate to say it. I hate to give him the up on this, but love or hate Trump, the fact that he called fake news and the media, a bunch of liars, he took the mask off, and it was painful. I was on the campaign trail in 2016, right? I was scared. I witnessed it all happening in America, and by him doing that, it was painful at that time. But fast forward now, almost 10 years. He, I think, played an actually large, an outsized role, at least for Americans, for domestic consumption of how we view ourselves in the place of the world, and that the media has been lying. How long they've been lying, I think people are still trying to put their heads around it, Ted. But I think you add in stuff like Red Note, when TikTok was down for that dramatic 24 hours or whatever it was, or 48 hours or whatever. But people are seeing that the propaganda they've been fed within their own border. And I think slowly it's going to take a while to get out of that Stockholm syndrome, right? From all the bullshit that we've been fed for 4 generations about, American superiority and, this exceptionalism needs to be chipped away before Americans can fully grasp the idea of unifying with the global South, in understanding that they are no better than the poor Yemeni in a village being bombed right now, or starving and dying of fucking cholera. It'll take a couple more generations before Americans accept that their life value is no different than that villager in Yemen. Right, that they're not intrinsically more valuable, but I think it's going to be a couple more generations before the veil is completely pulled off. But that's sorry for being so long, but it's a complicated question.
It is a complicated question. I mean, I want to try to really delve into what to answer it, and we have headlines to do, but I want to sort of say what I think is going to have to change. I mean, just to embody this, just to, not to sort of echo a little bit what you've been saying. I mean, U.S. news is completely U.S. centric, right? I mean, like we don't, for the most part, if there's a story that's in a country that is not part of in the U.S. sphere of influence, or a U.S. adversary or something, it probably won't be covered on the evening news, or to any extent, really, even in one of the better newspapers or other news outlets in the United States. It's a very different world. Like if you travel, or you just tune into the BBC has a globalist perspective, right? It's like the lead story could be in Zambia. Then the second story could be in the Seychelles. The third story could be in Nicaragua. And it's like, and really, truly, it's not necessarily about it's really kind of like they have a different metric. My theory there is that that's because the British Empire collapsed. And so when in a post-colonial era, after World War II, and Britain lost its empire and went through decades of grinding poverty, and basically England, even though culturally it's very dynamic, it's no longer a global hegemon the way that it was, when the sun never set on the British Empire. For the U.S. to get to the point where Americans are told enough and care about happenings in other countries, we're going to have to go through our own period of post-imperial collapse. We're going to have to be defeated. We're going to have to know, it's kind of like we're going to have to know that we lost one of the advantages that the German people at the end of World War II had was, and the Japanese was, they knew they had lost. So the old system, the old fascist regimes were discredited fully. The U.S. system is devolving. It's going down the drain, but it's rotting. Hasn't been defeated. I mean, we still have this huge economy, this massive military, all this influence, all this power, big nuclear arsenal. So as long as that stuff's all true, it's kind of like we don't really have to care about what goes on in other countries, even in the countries that we're at war with. I mean, think about what Britain was in the 19th century, the U.S. in the early 20th century. The U.S. is now and was in the late 20th century. I think about the U.S. invading, the U.K. invading Afghanistan in 1837, and they were so basically determined to have things the British way that they didn't just invade. They brought their wives and kids. They had camels full of British cigars, and wine. They brought their wooden furniture with them across the mountains from the British Raj into Afghanistan because they were like, we don't have to care about the natives or their ways or their culture or their history or anything. We'll just do things the British way because we're Brits and we rule the world. And that's kind of like, but now they're not like that anymore. And now we are like that. We're going to have to lose everything. We're going to have to be decimated. We're going to have to go through some kind of military, economic, environmental collapse before that changes. That's really my answer.
Yeah, it's sort of like in World War II, and again, we're trying to be as comprehensive in answering Wandon's question from yesterday. It's sort of like in World War II, those Japanese, Imperial Japanese soldiers that were hiding out, in the random islands of the Philippines, in the jungles, and they don't know that the war has ended and Imperial Japan lost. It's sort of like that. Like America's that Imperial Japanese soldier that's still hiding right now in the jungle, not knowing that Imperial America has lost, and that the world has caught up in development and is moving forward towards, wanting more unification rather than stratification. And that's the key to empire, right? Is divide and conquer. So now that the rest of the world, and you can look at BRICS as a great example of that, is this weird motley crew of countries that suddenly want to be friends with each other based on, economic prowess. I think that's a good sign. I think BRICS is a great sign, and the United States 20th century hegemony is coming to a close, but they just don't realize that Imperial America is dead. That's
Agreed. All. Well, we better get to these headlines, Manila.
Yeah. All right. Let's do that. So, Wandon, thank you for your question, and we should do this as a mailbag if we continue this on Fridays, like mailbag questions.
Yeah.
That'd be good. All right, let's do it.
All right. Right. Vladimir Putin says that he supports in principle the idea of a 30-day ceasefire. That's the idea that was proposed by the U.S. and the Ukraine, negotiated this, but Russia had not yet weighed in on it. Putin said, however, did note that he has a lot of questions about it, particularly regarding how the ceasefire would be verified across such a long front line in the military front line. Such a tactic could allow Russia to engage in protracted negotiations without immediately rejecting an offer. However, breaking news, Trump said that he had a conversation with Putin late yesterday and that it went very well. And he believes the war is going to come to a quick and rapid conclusion. Putin also said that he was worried that the Ukrainians might use the 30-day ceasefire to regroup and rearm. He says that he would want to impose his own conditions on the framework of the ceasefire, like no more weapons shipped by Western European or the U.S. countries, or a ban on mobilization. 3 years into the war, Russia now controls about 22% of Ukraine, and it wants to keep that and maybe get a little more. The Kremlin says it's not giving back any of that. Dmitry Peskov, the spokesperson for the Kremlin, says Crimea, Sevastopol, Kherson, Zaporozhye, Donetsk, Luhansk, these are regions of Russia. They are written into the constitution. This is a given fact. And in fact, those are all places that have been annexed and after a plebiscite in which the populations all voted to join Russia. Russia annexed Crimea, including Sevastopol, in 2014. It's still internationally recognized as part of Ukraine, but it's worth pointing out that Crimea historically was never part of Ukraine. In June, Putin said Russia would immediately stop the war if Ukraine were to surrender those 4 southeastern regions that Russian troops partly occupied and agree not to join NATO. The Kremlin also says that there shouldn't be any foreign peacekeepers, notably French or other European peacekeepers, as has been proposed, because those might if there was a problem, they might be viewed as representing NATO, and that could trigger an Article 5 World War III situation. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova says Russia would not accept involvement in the conflict of other countries, and that Moscow would oppose this with all means. Talks between Russia and the U.S. on February 27th were about each side's diplomatic missions also. The operations have been significantly reduced. In other words, we're talking about embassies and consulates. Russia wants the return of 6 diplomatic buildings that were seized illegally by the U.S. between 2016 and 2018. These include buildings here in New York City and in Maryland, frozen by Obama, and consulates in Seattle and San Francisco that were shut down under Trump the first time around because of their proximity to sites like Silicon Valley, a sub-base, and Boeing facilities. Russia also wants to lift restrictions on transnational payments like the SWIFT system, as well as the sale of oil and gas, of which Russia has a lot, and curbs on its oil tankers. One of the most significant measures Russia has faced has been the freezing of $300 billion in central bank assets held in Western banks. The EU adopted a plan to use the interest generated from those assets to give to the Ukrainians. Last year, Putin said the strategy is theft. Hard to argue. The French have proposed using the assets as collateral, which would allow them to be seized if Moscow were to violate the ceasefire agreement. Russia also pushed in Istanbul for the resumption of direct flights between Moscow and other Russian cities to the United States, which would also mark an easing of sanctions. The State Department, however, did not mention that issue in its statement on the discussions. And of course, obviously, there's the Biden sanctions against RT and Sputnik that caused Manila and I and our colleagues to be tossed out on the street unemployed. So there's a lot to break down here. Trump personally asked Putin as a favor not to slaughter the Ukrainians who invaded the Kursk region of Russia. They've now pretty much almost encircled them. And Putin said, well, they can either surrender or die. That's kind of how it works in war when you are encircled. But Trump is saying, like, well, please don't kill them. I suspect they just need to surrender. Maybe the way that can be worked out is if Putin agrees to rapidly repatriate them to Ukraine. That probably would be the stumbling block that would get rid of that.
I think there'll be POWs. I think we've seen for 3 years now literally the slow rollout of the special military operation. I mean, if you look at the difference between 1 year of war in Gaza versus 3 years of war in Ukraine, and only specific regions of Ukraine have been bombed, and even then, not carpet bombed. They've been very precise attacks, precise fights. I don't think
not in major cities, not in major population centers.
I don't think the Russians are gonna kill. I mean, now these guys are all surrounded in Kursk.
They don't want.
You and I said this.
They don't want
to kill them.
They don't want to kill them, and they don't want them as prisoners. I think they'll just process them and send them back to Ukraine.
That's very possible.
What for? You have to pay money to feed prisoners. What's the point?
Well, I don't know. I just don't think he's gonna kill them, because good or bad, whether we like it or not, I think the Russians still
view
them
anyway.
as family. The Russians still view them as family, even though the other side doesn't view the Russians as family. So, good or bad, whatever. I think that's why Putin has not taken the U.S. military tact of just rolling into a country and carpet bombing the shit out of it, because that's what the U.S. does wherever it goes, right? We don't take exacting measures. We just go bomb the shit out of it and then figure out whoever, whack-a-mole with insurgents or whoever pops up. That's not what the Russians have done. So I think Kursk, I think it was a failed fucking venture to begin with. And that was the first sign.
It was an act of desperation. It's like the Battle of the Bulge when the Nazi Germans, did their last offensive, right? It was the
first sign, the obvious one.
Yeah, no, that's true. Look, I think probably what will happen is the Russians will hold on to them, as POWs for maybe a year, or 6 months. Just sit tight, make sure that the ceasefire is followed by an armistice, that it's being upheld, and that they don't have to worry about these troops going back to Ukraine and then, taking up arms and going and then starting up a war again. Because, despite all the rhetoric you hear in mainstream media, it's been the Ukrainians who have broken every agreement that they've ever signed. So,
right.
If there's reason not to trust here, it's Russians have a lot of reasons not to trust the Ukrainians. Really, Ukrainians can talk a lot of shit about
or
how they
trust
don't
the Americans.
The Ukrainians can say they don't trust the Russians, and I guess they don't have to, but they don't really have a lot of reason not to. The Russians have pretty much done what they've said.
I don't know why the Russians insist on trusting the Americans. That's
well, I think Trump is a big opportunity for both sides here. Look, this war, it's not doing anyone any good. Except for the defense industry, and it needs to stop. Obviously,
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
And Russia needs to be reintegrated into the West if it's for the best of everyone. They'll be fine without it, but it'd be also good for. It's just that you can't have a huge country completely like Russia, completely that you can't talk to or do business with. It doesn't work in a globalized economy.
Since this is Friday, a fun Friday show, I'm gonna put on my tinfoil hat for a second, Ted, and bring this back to the Trump-Putin relationship. So there's a lot of chatter online about Trump deliberately pushing America into a recession. And there's some reasonable points that people make as to why that might be. And the more I think about it, the more I think it's actually feasible that this is a deliberate push towards recession so that Trump and Putin can make the realignment. This is like my tinfoil hat stuff.
Wait,
so they
can
make
why? How?
I'll get there. So they can make this realignment by Trump saying, okay, Americans, your egg prices are crazy, your gas prices, your heating, everything's going through the roof. I have just made this tremendous deal to end the war with Ukraine, with Vladimir Putin, and America is getting access to Russia's big, beautiful oil reserves for cheap. And we are going to starve India and China of getting that beautiful Russian crude. We're going to bring it here to America for pennies on the dollar. And we're going to give it to Americans as a cost savings. And I'm bringing you out of recession. And I have brought this war to a close. It's possible. Just saying.
No.
I think because it would look good for him. It would look good for him to be like, I made a deal with Vladimir Putin and now we're getting beautiful Russian crude. And we're not giving it to the Europeans. We're not giving it to China. We're not giving it to India.
Even if we got a special deal on Russian crude, that's not enough by itself to get an entire economy the size of the U.S. out of recession. That's just cheap. I think it helps, but it's not enough. It's not enough by itself, though.
It works as a PR tack to say, hey, look.
Yeah, but every time people go to the grocery store and they're paying $1 an egg, they're not going to be happy.
So I don't know how he's going to figure that out, but I think that's going to play into saying, I've alleviated some of your winter gas bills come, I don't know, next winter, 2025 going into 26.
I don't know about that. Could be.
Yeah, I could, but that's how he brings it to a close.
I don't like that theory. All right. Senator Chuck Schumer of New York has done a flip-flop. He's the minority leader of the Democratic Party. He broke with his own party from his own idea yesterday and lined up enough Democrats to advance a Republican bill to keep federal funding going past today's deadline at midnight. He says Democrats can't allow a government shutdown, and he has the reasons. And I think he was listening to stuff that I've said during a private luncheon with his fellow Democrats. He stunned them by saying that he plans to vote to allow the Republican bill to go forward, and says he had enough votes to help the Republicans break that filibuster by his own party. In fact, the filibuster was his own idea. It was a radical turnaround from the day before, when Schumer said that Democrats were united against the legislation, and a remarkable move at a time when many progressive activists have been asking senators to block Trump's bill. In a speech just later on the Senate floor, Schumer announced his plan to vote with the Republicans, which will fund the government through September 30th. He said that if Democrats stood in the way, it would lead to a shutdown that would only empower Trump, Elon Musk, and Doge to defund and dismantle federal programs. Now, that's exactly what I've said. It's like, now, if let's just say, because of Doge and all the mass firings, Social Security checks are going out late. People aren't getting their IRS refund checks on time because there's no staff to do it. Well, if the government's shut down, the Republicans could say, well, that's the Democrats' fault. That's why that's not happening. So, this is it would be very bad timing to do this now. The Republican bill is a terrible option, Schumer said. It's deeply partisan. It doesn't address far too many of the country's needs. But I believe allowing Trump to take even much more power via a government shutdown is a far worse option. In a shutdown, he said, the Trump administration would have full authority to deem whole agencies, programs, and personnel non-essential, furloughing staff with no promise that they would ever get rehired. So in other words, it would be like Doge on steroids. He also warned that if the government closes, Trump and the Republicans would have no incentive to reopen, since during that time they could selectively fund their favorite departments and agencies, while the ones they don't like would languish. Chuck Schumer, not someone I normally agree with, but I think he's right this time.
Oh yeah, I oftentimes am very, very annoyed by Chuck Schumer, and I know they were doing the whole shutdown Schumer. They were labeling him. They were like, make this hashtag trend, shut down Schumer, or Schumer shutdown. And yeah, you can position it as him folding, right, or like collapsing like a house of cards. But I think that's the right thing to do. And I know people like AOC are really pissed off at him for doing this, saying that he's the leader of the party, or de facto, right? I mean, I think Hakeem Jeffries is technically the leader of the party, but whatever. It's Chuck Schumer. He's like the great uncle of the party, because he's kind of just been there forever. So he's the de facto leader, and I think he's doing the right thing. And they're saying he's giving a win. Right, doing the smart thing.
Basically
he's giving a win to Trump.
Right now, you kind of want to do jujitsu, right, where you use the power of your enemy's attack against them. Right now, if you're the Democrats, the smart thing to do is let the Republicans really screw a lot of stuff up, and just stand by and let them break the government, and then be like, look, they broke the government. That's the smart move. Don't get in the way of your opponent while they're screwing up. Republicans, they haven't screwed up completely yet, but you can see it coming.
And here's the worst part: is Donald Trump is shitting on Rand Paul and Thomas Massie, who are probably the smartest of the Republican senators.
That's not a coincidence.
And it baffles me. I've never been under the illusion that Donald Trump is, this master chess player, right? I think he views the whole world as, a real estate board, right? Like that he wants to, like New York City, right? He's like, I want to first take out, this hotel, build this up, and then the town builds around it. Then I'm going to go here and build this project. He views it like that, and everything is so transactional. But I think when it comes to like this particular situation with those two men, I think somebody is, I don't know who, but somebody is making him believe that those guys are going to fuck up his plans, when I think those guys are probably more MAGA, like Make America Great America First. Those guys are probably more America First than any other Republicans. So I don't know. He's got those two in his crosshairs right now, especially Thomas Massie, who wears a fucking debt watch pin that's like connected to Wi-Fi and constantly changing.
Really?
Yeah, you didn't know that? It's like the debt board in New York City.
Yeah.
He wears it on his jacket.
Hot.
Every day. And it's like moving. It's constantly moving because it's like Wi-Fi connected. And if a guy like that is who is in your crosshairs, you have to wonder, well, what the fuck are your priorities, Donald Trump? Like, if you're trying to bring down the debt, you are trying to put America first, you're trying to do all these things. Those are all the things that Thomas Massie talks about. And he's got Massie in his crosshairs. So I don't know. I don't know if he's looked that far ahead, at the last of his the 4 years. I don't know if he's looked that far ahead, because I don't think he's that type of guy. I think he looks in the immediate now or immediate future, like next week at most. But this is not a good approach. Let them find whatever Chuck Schumer. He's giving them his win, whatever, giving Trump the win, the Republicans the win. But the long game of this, I think the Republicans are going to, by way of Donald Trump, are going to fuck shit up. And I don't have any faith either that the Republicans are going to, or excuse me, the Democrats. Hard to differentiate the two these days, Ted.
Any day.
Yeah. So, I don't have any faith that they're going to fix things, at the midterms 2 years from now, that they're going to have a roaring comeback and there's going to be a big blue wave. And even if they did, they have no plan. So whatever. This is all theatrics, and I'm over all of them at this point.
Okay. All right. Let's keep going here. Okay. This story is very disturbing and strange.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it kind of follows up the experience that we talked about of Mahmoud Khalil, but this is a different story. Chained, detained for weeks, and eventually deported, 2 tourists from Germany trying to get into the U.S. were recently tangled into the ICE system in response to Trump's push to restrict entry and deport people en masse. The cases of Jessica Brolsha, who was held in ICE detention for 46 days, and Lucas Seeloff, held for 16, and their stories of being handled roughly by immigration goons have grabbed headlines across Germany and are making the U.S. look awful. Tourists from most European countries generally enjoy visa-free travel to the U.S. for up to 90 days, but Mr. Seeloff and Ms. Brosche were stopped separately at the San Ysidro border crossing between San Diego and Tijuana, told that they were denied entry, and then sent off to a detention center, according to their own accounts and those of their friends. Mr. Seeloff said that he was denied a translator and couldn't understand what was happening to him. Ms. Brosche's friends said that she was thrown into solitary confinement for 9 days. By their accounts, both were then flown back to Germany, and they were never told why they were ever detained in the first place. Ms. Brosche was detained on January 25th. She was traveling on the ESTA program, Electronic System for Travel Authorization, which is now required for U.S. people to visit Europe and vice versa. She told Bild, a German newspaper, that she had completed the ESTA authorization and planned to enter the U.S. after spending a week in Tijuana. At the border, the official said, "You have a problem." They then sent her to the Otay Mesa Detention Center in San Diego. She said she'd be detained. They told her she'd only be detained for a couple of days, but what followed was that she was denied entry, thrown into solitary for 9 days, and she was stuck there for over 6 weeks. Apparently, they kind of forgot about her and couldn't figure out what to do. So she got back into Germany on Wednesday, finally, after her ordeal. And there's more to talk about, but I know you want to show something here.
I want to show the video regarding the guy, what's his name? Mr. Seeloff. But this is the woman on screen here. She's a German tattoo artist. I guess that makes sense by looking at her. Given her appearance
her
or whatever. But that's just so freaking weird to me. I mean, I can't imagine, Ted, like, as an American, I just came back from Europe. I just came back from Iceland, right? And I had no problems going into Iceland. I had more problems coming back into the U.S.
Oh, I always have that. I always feel the same way. Coming into the U.S. is a shit show.
It's like I had to do my best to, retain my composure. But it's almost like, dude, what the fuck do you want? I'm an American, born and raised. Do you want to hear me talk and cuss like this so that way you can confirm that I'm a fucking asshole American? Like, what do you need me to say at the border control, right? Coming in. Going over there was like lovely. The Icelanders were lovely.
They're professional, civilized.
Yes, like totally lovely.
Yeah, I mean, our immigration guys, like at JFK, and JFK is not even the worst. They're goons. They're mooks. They're mean. They're not nice. I mean, there's a few exceptions, but for the most part, it's an unpleasant experience.
I came back through Baltimore. So
I can imagine that.
Just think about that, Ted.
One of the worst ones is, I would say, from internationally, is Miami. That's an ugly one. Houston's bad too.
Yeah, I get that maybe I don't fit what you think an American, like born and raised.
Well, as soon as you open your mouth, like you say. All right, let's keep going.
Right.
Mr. Oh, are you going to show it?
No. I'm going to show the video. So here's the video of local news explaining in better detail about what happened to the guy, Mr. Seeloff, and with his fiance, because it's even more disturbing is, like I said, me being an American citizen, Mr. Seeloff's fiance is an American, born and raised, white girl American, white girl. So
as American as you can be.
Right. I think her last name's like Taylor.
On Valentine's Day, Vegas resident Lennon Tyler went to Tijuana with her dog Jasper, who needed an expensive surgery. Her fiancé, Lucas Seeloff, who was visiting from Germany, came along for the trip.
I think this was like our third trip to Mexico. We never had any problems before.
But not this time.
The border agent sees his German passport and becomes immediately aggressive and begins asking him in a very interrogating tone, "Where do you live?" He just says, "Well, we're going to Las Vegas."
She says her fiance's answer to that question raised suspicion with officers who took the couple to secondary screening in handcuffs.
They take me over to a bench. They chain my ankle to a bench. Hours go by.
You're saying you, as a U.S. citizen, were detained and you had your ankles shackled to the ground?
Yes, that's right.
Tyler hasn't seen her fiancé in person since the incident at the border. ICE arrested the 25-year-old and placed him inside the Otay Mesa detention center.
It was awful. You just in jail and you have to wait that you can get out and you never know when it happens.
Tyler called Team 10 after seeing our reporting on Jessica Brosha.
I have these posters we wanted to put all over the German embassy.
ICE arrested the Berlin tattoo artist after she arrived at the border in January from Tijuana. Border officers accused her of violating the terms of her visa. She spoke to me from detention.
I just want to get home, I'm really desperate.
On Monday, I asked ICE why Seeloff was being detained. I never got a response, but soon after, Tyler says she got a call from her fiancé.
He sounds panicked. He says, "Baby, I need you right now." And I said, "What do you need?" And he says, "They just called my name right now, and I need you to book this flight."
On Wednesday evening, ICE escorted Seeloff to the airport, where he boarded a flight back home to Germany. He spoke to Team 10 after getting off the plane.
I'm grateful to be home.
What's your message to other Germans who might be thinking about coming to the U.S.?
Don't come here. It's not safe.
An unsettling warning for citizens of one of America's strongest allies. Austin Grabish.
Whoa.
So, look at his fiance. She's a white American woman. I'm an Asian American woman. That's a white American woman. They treated her like they chained her ankles
Yeah, not that it should be okay to do that to, a swarthy dude,
swarthy German
from Afghanistan. But still, I mean, it's like, the point is, obviously, if they'll do it to her, they're going to do it to anybody. I mean, it's true. Nobody's safe.
Look at this girl and look at this guy. Like, I mean, that's part of
what the fuck do you think happened? I mean, what do you think is going on? I mean, what is up with them? I mean, it can't be that this was a message that came down from DHS to ICE saying, like, nab Germans, tourists, like, not to mention, there's also, this is not the only case, right? I mean, there's also the situation of this British cartoonist who also was arrested at the Canadian border, the U.S.-Canada border crossing. Oh. And she's still, as far as I know, still in detention. She has disappeared. She's a British national. She was trying to leave the U.S. to go into Canada, and she was nailed, and the Canadians had some kind of glitch, and then they said, oh, you have to go back to the U.S., and the U.S. nabbed her. She'd been running around the U.S. for days, and, like, no problem. So, it's like,
I don't know.
I mean, this is either some insanely dumb people or who are in ICE, which is entirely possible, or, I just don't know. Producer Robbie's asking if this could be due to the car attacks happening in Germany. But I mean, okay, that doesn't explain the British thing.
No. I mean, why would that have to do with the car attacks in Germany when those guys, if anything, you're going to be looking for Arab Germans or Muslim Germans, right? And like, if that's what you're looking for, if you're looking for terrorists, you're not looking for this guy. So I don't think that explains it. So I don't know. Maybe it's dumb agents. Maybe it's some weird computer glitches. Maybe, I don't know. I really don't know. But it's interesting. And I agree, Robbie, the most effective terrorists would look like you. However, that's just not the case. That's not who are actually, doing the terrorism. So that it doesn't explain what's happening to all these random Europeans coming to the US. Tourist season is coming up here, Ted. I mean, as well for you in New York City, millions of
well, it's always tourist season in New York. Yeah.
Is it really? But especially here in
summer, and it'll really happen in May, June. Yeah. For
us, we get it during the cherry blossoms. That's kind of the kickoff of tourist season.
That's kind of past, isn't it?
No, it's coming up soon, like in the next few weeks. I expect it. We don't know when the blooms happen because they bloom. But in the next couple of weeks, I would say, and I think a lot of people are going to think twice.
Everyone's going to think that the U.S. we're crazy. Like, what the fuck is wrong with us? I mean, Europeans we shouldn't even have this ESTA program. We should just be able to, I mean, like in the old days, you just get on a plane, you have a U.S. passport, you have a European passport, you can go to each other's countries, the end.
Right. You're in friendly countries, you go, it's fine, the end. Like, I don't know. I don't think the Trump administration is going to make for friendly ties with the European countries, because the EU countries, a lot of them are in NATO, and Trump's not exactly their darling either. So I'm glad I got my European vibes out of my system early.
At least I have an EU passport, so not a problem for me. But although coming back into the States, I guess I could be arrested.
That's the danger, Ted.
Well, by the way, you can be arrested. I could be arrested. You and I both could be arrested right now by ICE. Americans don't know this, but probably ICE operates within a 100-mile zone of any U.S. international border.
Any border.
Which means that basically international waters start about 12 miles offshore. So 86 miles inland, anywhere along the eastern or west coast of the United States, ICE can pull you over. They can nab you on the subway in New York. They can get you in... They can get you. Robbie's saying he's in that zone. No, you're not. You're not 86 miles. Oh, yeah, you are. You're 86 miles from Kanadistan. That's true. And that's true. But I always forget about the our northern neighbors. But yeah, that's
first state.
Our soon-to-be 51st state. We have to keep saying
obviously.
That.
Governor Trudeau is stepping down. So
Canada.
Yeah,
well,
but this is
all right. Anyway, this is very
terrifying.
disturbing, and we'll continue to follow it. But it is a very strange story, and I have to admit, I just kind of don't understand
I think more of it's going to happen.
What the fuck is going on with the U.S.? Anyway, the U.S. and Israel have reached out to officials of 3 countries. Speaking of strange shit, have reached out to the officials of 3 countries in East Africa to talk about using their territories in order to repatriate the Palestinians after they're ethnically cleansed from Gaza under Trump's plan. That, according to the AP. This time, they're talking to, this is insane, Sudan, which, by the way, they have a civil war right now.
Right.
They have a hot civil war. So
That's why it's a great place to go as refugees, Ted.
They're used to it. They're like, oh, I know this. I know this
oh,
situation.
I know that air drill, that air siren. I know this already.
So they're going to talk to, like, yeah, they're in the middle of a hot war in Sudan. Somalia is the other one. Another country not exactly.
Totally fine.
Totally peaceful. No problems there.
No problems.
The people love this. And the breakaway region of Somalia known as Somaliland. So literally by definition in a civil war. So they're insane. Anyway, so obviously Trump said that he wanted to resettle the Palestinians in a beautiful area. Remember that? These would not be beautiful areas. Officials from Sudan say that they turned down the U.S.
If they got rebuilt to Trump Tower standards, it could be beautiful because they are coastal countries, Ted.
This is hilarious. The Sudanese said, thanks, but no thanks. The Somalis and the Somalilanders say they don't know what the fuck Trump is talking about. They haven't heard from him. It's like, okay, whatever. So Trump wants to send these 2 million people permanently elsewhere. Anyway, we already know that whole plan. It was once considered a crazy fantasy to kick everyone out, all the Palestinians out of Gaza. But now Trump has presented this meeting. Netanyahu likes it. The Palestinians, of course, say no fucking way. And of course, and the Israelis say, oh, it would all be voluntary. And the Gazans are like, fuck you. The Arabs have said no fucking way. Also, anyway, Trump says he stands by his vision. Of course, this would be an international war crime of the highest type, the worst type. I mean, it's totally so extreme. But of all countries, I mean, Sudan?
I know. Picking Sudan and Somalia, like they've also entertained Ethiopia. They kicked around the idea of Eritrea, except Eritrea has just come under, because that's real safe too, Ted. And Eritrea just made a deal. Their dictator there, it had just recently made a deal with Turkey, like literally days ago, to do like military cooperation with Turkey and Eritrea. So that whole area of that eastern horn of Africa, totally safe.
Yeah, it's so great.
Prime real estate.
Al-Shabaab, Shmal Shabaab. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
It's way better than Gaza. That's what he's going to say.
I mean, this scheme reminds me of an episode of World War II that is now largely forgotten. Before the final solution was conceived at the Wannsee Conference by the Nazi hierarchy, which led to the construction of the death camps in Central and Eastern Europe, the Nazi hierarchy had a scheme, which was to send all the Jews of Europe to Madagascar. Madagascar was a French colony, and when France fell to the Germans and they established a Vichy puppet regime in 1940, all the colonies became Vichy colonies, which meant effectively they were under indirect German control. So the Germans are like, we can get rid of all the Jews and we'll ship them off to Madagascar. And they really wanted to do this, but they couldn't because there was an Allied naval blockade of Nazi-occupied Europe. So there was, the ships wouldn't have been able to leave and get through the blockade to get out to Madagascar. And so this is that was an insane scheme. And this is like that. It's another insane scheme.
Yeah. How about not kicking people out of their homes? It's just an idea. I mean,
well, they probably should have not bombed them all first.
Even though their homes are destroyed by bombs, like, okay, for example, my motherland, Los Angeles. We recently looked like we got bombed, right? But it was, fire. It was a fire NATO that went all over the Pacific Palisades and obviously the eastern flank of northeast Los Angeles, near. People know the term like Pasadena because of the Rose Bowl and all that. So it's like on the mountain.
Song, the little old lady from Pasadena.
I don't know that song.
I think it's the Beach Boys, if I'm not mistaken.
Is it really?
Uh-huh.
I don't know that song. Well, anyway, so in that area, there's two separate areas there. Those areas both look like. I mean, if you said it was Gaza, I'd believe you. If I didn't see
Jan and Dean, same thing.
Huh. If you told me those pictures, destroyed houses, the rubble, if you told me that was Gaza, I might believe you. But nobody is telling the Pacific Palisaders or the whole general region there of the Northeast is called the Sierra Madre region. Mm-hmm. So nobody's telling the Sierra Madreans they can't go back to their destroyed properties because that parcel of land is still theirs. Like
right.
it's still theirs, even though the fires
and
burnt
so
it down.
And Gaza is still the Palestinians. It belongs to them under every doctrine of law.
Yeah. So like, why would you force? I don't even know. This kind of forced resettlement all through history has never worked out well.
It's always been catastrophic. I mean, look at this.
Yeah, never worked.
Look at the partition of British India into what was then Pakistan and India.
Yes,
and then
that's so great.
Millions of people died in that forced resettlement. Yeah.
And then look at more modern times when you in the 20th century with any kind of forced quote evacuation into wherever a population of people into wherever, name any country. Look at the assimilation and how great that's worked out. I mean, look here in the U.S. and this is a producer
Stalin
Robbie
used to
thing.
love to do that, and the former Soviet Union is still dealing with the aftermath of that crap.
Well, there's the producer Robbie stuff. You think about the Haitians in Ohio supposedly eating cats and dogs and whatever, stealing your pets, right? When you move large, and we're going to scale that down, right? We're going to say a few thousand Haitians into Ohio. That's just a few thousand, right? Into this town.
I think it was like over
Ohio.
10,000, but your point is still, it's still not 2 million people. Well, it's not 2 million people anyway. It's like 1.7 million are left in Gaza because the Israelis have killed about 400 to 500,000.
Right. But with the Haitians being relocated to this town in Ohio, relative to how many people are in Ohio, that's a tiny fraction.
Oh yeah, no, it had a huge demographic impact on the town.
But huge impact on that town and the local Ohioans, is that what they're called? Yeah. Ohioans were not happy and have not been happy. So whether or not the cat eating is true doesn't matter.
It was not true.
The fact is that people do not acclimate to a big swath of new populations into their homeland, wherever it is, whether it's Ohio or parts of the Soviet Union or whatever. People don't do that. It doesn't go well.
No, that's true. And if you think about like the population of a place like Eritrea, there's only 3.5 million people in Eritrea. You're going to bring are you going to increase the population by like basically 60% of a country that is dirt fucking poor? This country claims that it can't absorb like in a population increase of 5%, and we're rich compared to Eritrea. Okay,
right?
It's madness. Say even Somalia also incredibly poor. 18 million people. You want to sound like nearly 2 million people there? Really? That's a 16% increase in population. It would be like, it's already a failed state. It would like collapse even worse.
There are better job opportunities in Somalia. I hear the pirates are hiring. There's a lot of, because there's no job opportunities in Gaza before the war, and certainly not presently during the war. So I'm
getting to the point where I kind of feel like so I always felt that after World War II, I don't understand why Israel wasn't created as part of Germany. After all, Germany caused the problem.
Right.
They caused the Holocaust.
You guys did it.
You did it. So, and not to mention, most Jews in Israel today are from Eastern and Central Europe. They'd be more comfortable in Germany than out there in the rocks surrounded by Muslims, right? Okay. I mean, this is kind of like, it's a country where there were lots of Jews to begin with, right? So it's like,
true.
okay, so take away part of Germany. Now, similarly, analogously, Israel, you have caused the problem in Gaza. I tell you what, we're going to take part of Israel and give it we're going to rebuild Gaza. I don't know, like maybe it'll be Gaza North. Like basically they get Tel Aviv up to Haifa. And like all you Israelis, you can share because you caused the fucking problem.
Your government did this, so your government should fix it. But I don't know.
And there are. I mean, Israel's a tiny country the size of New Jersey. But still, it has, it has, when you go there.
Only New Jersey?
Yeah. There's still a lot of room, though. You can basically, you can get around and, there's room where they could build from scratch and provide housing for all these people. They really could.
Like
it should come from Israel.
Like producer Robbie says, the Indian reservation model.
Well, that's not what we need to be doing because that didn't work out. But yeah.
No, but I mean, at least they'd still be in the motherland.
One last story, and then we're gonna kick off our weekend. 4 people jumped in front of New York City subway trains in less than 24 hours. That, according to the New York Daily News. This is probably one of the worst days. Service was delayed on the number 7 line. Which goes from Midtown Manhattan all the way out into Eastern Queens into the Chinatown area called Flushing. That after an unidentified person leapt in front of a Queens-bound train as it entered the 103rd Street station in Corona. If you know your Simon and Garfunkel, you know the Queen of Corona song. Shortly after 2:30 in the afternoon, the incident happened barely an hour after another person got hit by an Uptown number 1 train, that's my line, as the subway entered 191st Street, that's in Upper Manhattan in Washington Heights near the George Washington Bridge. A transit authority source told the Daily News that the person survived his or her apparent suicide attempt and is in hospital. Another person, however, got killed Wednesday night after they jumped in front of the number 2 subway at the 96th Street station on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, not too far from me, at 7:30 p.m., less than an hour after someone else apparently got run over also on the number 1 line. Man, my line is covered with blood at the 207th Street station. That's all the way up in Upper Manhattan, right before you hit the Bronx. According to the NYPD, they don't think any criminality was involved. No one got pushed. It just seems to be sad, depressed people.
Suicide by subway?
Well, it's generally pretty certain. I had a friend who drove a Muni subway train in San Francisco, and someone jumped in front of his train, and he was not only traumatized for really the rest of his life, but they took him off subway duty because it happened. You're right up at the front, and then the person you can't stop. I mean, because you're driving
so you
a
can
train,
see them right there.
Yeah, you see it like right up close. It's like splat right there, and like basically it freaked him out, and they took him off, and so they put him in a token booth instead, selling fares. I don't know if they do that now because I think they have machines that sell the fares now in San Francisco. But anyway, it fucked up his career and it fucked up his whole psychological well-being.
Yeah. Jeez,
I mean, it's like if nothing else, don't do that because it really. I also had a friend who used to fish out the bodies in the Coast Guard from the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, where about 3 people a day jump off that bridge. It's about 1,000 a year. And I don't know if that's still the numbers, but that's what it used to be. Anyway, so he was always fishing the bodies out, and he talked about just like how bleak it was.
Well, we had in Los Angeles, in Pasadena, in fact, we were just talking about Pasadena. So just off the main drag, which is Colorado Boulevard, there's this beautiful like Art Deco bridge, a small bridge, but because there are a lot of rivers, people don't realize it, like small rivers and ravines, like in the mountainous parts of California, like the San Gabriel River. And so the east side of Los Angeles has a lot of bridges. And this particular bridge, it's, like I said, a beautiful old Art Deco bridge, beautiful, taking pictures. I mean, it's a place you go to take beautiful pictures if you're a professional photographer. However, us locals, we know it as Suicide Bridge because you jump straight down several hundred feet into the ravine and you're just splat. So what they did by the time I was in college, 25 or so years ago in that area, I went there because everybody walks there to go look, and it's beautiful. It's got those old lamp posts, the Art Deco lamp posts and carvings, like carvings on the stone of the rails of the bridge. And so you look over to look down at the ravine, and you look over, and it's about 25 years ago, they wised up and put netting, like maybe 50
Boy,
feet
do you
below.
feel dumb when you find yourself like caught like a bug rolling around in the net.
So because that, like, I guess in the 80s and 90s, a lot of people were committing suicide there. I don't know what was happening in that local area, but it prompted.
And once the word gets out that like there's a place, there's a lot of copycats.
A famous place. Yeah, unfortunately, it's very sad. But luckily, because there's a net there, if you're too dumb to look over and realize, oh, I can't fall to my death, and you get caught in that, I feel like they should put up like a virtual dunce cap on your picture. Like you should be like, this person caught trying to jump off Suicide Bridge in Pasadena, California. Like shame you into not doing it. I don't know
if shame's really going to work if you're already at the point where you're going to off yourself.
Or like force you into mental help.
No, I mean, it's interesting, right? I mean, I think, obviously it's a coincidence, I imagine, but like what's going on, right? I mean, it's just a reminder that we are suffering from a national mental health crisis.
Absolutely.
And, there's a lot of reasons, there's a lot of insecurity. I am going to kind of put a little bit of this on the president. When you have a calm, like leader who makes you think everything is going to be okay, that has a different vibe than what we have currently, where, it's kind of like, anything can happen. People feel very insecure, scared, not optimistic. The irony is, I think not everything Donald Trump does is bad. I think there's,
right.
I think there's quite a few, there are some reasons to be cheerful here, but, he's a terrible communicator, really. He doesn't even know how.
Comical.
It's
so bad that it's comical.
He doesn't even know how to sell his own positive stuff. He's such a bad communicator that he lost the 2020 election because he couldn't brag about the COVID vaccines that he initiated. Weird. That's an amazing triumph. He saved millions of lives, but he couldn't sell it. He couldn't just say, look, I did that, because of me, you're alive. He could have said that.
Maybe.
And he'd be right. It's like, I was incredibly grateful to President Trump for Operation Warp Speed. I felt like it may have saved my life. But he couldn't sell it. He can't sell his own shit. It's really, really weird. No wonder he can't move those ties or those stakes.
Or his stakes. Well, I'm glad we didn't end the week with like suicide by subway. At least we can all agree, Ted, no matter what we think of Donald Trump, love him, hate him. I think it's pretty universal that Trump's communication style
sucks.
Is at least comical.
Oh, for sure. I think he's very funny. I just think that he shouldn't be president of the United States. No.
Not only is it funny when he's deliberately trying to be funny, like when he means to poke fun or make jokes, which he does, and he can be very charming when he does that.
Mm-hmm.
But even when he's trying to be dead serious, the fact that he's in the position of being the second time the president of the United States, the de facto, quote, leader of the free world, and he talks the way he does, his style of communication, that in and of itself is comical, but to a sad, dark comedy type of laughter. Because
no, it's
like
it's the absurdity. You have
like
to
when he was like talking like this and like this to Volodymyr Zelenskyy and just you know, when you're
actually that was him at his best.
That's I know, and it's
because he was passionate and I think genuine, and he was really not scripted there. He was
but at some
angry
point,
and annoyed.
At some point, I laughed. At first, I was shocked, but once I watched it again and got over the shock, then I was laughing because I was like, "This is pure Trump. This is Trump. Like this is who that man is. Like that. That's exactly who this man is." And I started laughing because it's just so Trump. And yeah, I can't wait to see what else all comes down the pike because like I got a headline come through my phone that says Volodymyr Zelenskyy says we have a good chance to end this war quickly and secure peace.
Okay, good.
I wonder what just happened. What just happened while we were on air. So we'll see.
No, I think obviously what happened is that the Ukrainians have now talked to their American counterparts. Clearly, the outlines of a deal are now set. Trump talked to Putin yesterday.
Right.
It looks like, basically there's some basic stuff that has to happen. I'm suspecting we're going to see a 30-day, one-time, non-renewable ceasefire during which there's going to be an embargo on further weapons sales to Ukraine, and there's going to be a need on the part of the Russians to they're going to want to see an armistice. They're going to want to see those 30 days used to negotiate a permanent cessation of hostilities. I mean, it shouldn't take that long. I mean, armistices have been negotiated literally in 24 hours historically. So it's not like it's impossible.
If I were an advisor to the Kremlin, I would look at this even after this phone call with Donald Trump last night. I would still look at this with a lot of skepticism because
the devil's always in the details.
I would point to Minsk 1 and Minsk 2. Why would I trust the Americans and the Europeans? You fucked us over twice. If I was a Russian analyst and talking to President Putin,
I don't know. I mean,
don't trust them.
The way I look at it is like, so what do the Russians have to lose? The Americans and the Ukrainians make certain commitments. Let's say they break them.
They'll break and then they'll rearm
but the Russians, the Russians don't lose anything. They still have the territory that they've captured.
Sure.
So
but
who cares? Then hostilities resume and that's it.
I mean, they still have the upper hand, yes, but I just feel like it worsens everything. And especially in terms of like what about the bilateral relations between the U.S. and Russia when we find out that Ukraine and the U.S. have colluded to pull the wool over Russia's eyes yet again.
About what?
Or the EU, just like Minsk 1 or Minsk 2, right? That we're not going to ship arms over there.
Well, the Russians are going to know if we do. So, they're going to know. It won't be a secret.
Yeah,
so.
I just don't have a lot of faith in it. But anyway,
I'm as optimistic as can be, which for Ted Rall is not that optimistic, but like I think I'd say it's like it's better. It's significantly better than 50% chance that we're going to see an end to this war because there's just no motivation.
But when? Do you mean soon?
Oh yeah, I think this is all going to be like a permanent. We're going to see a permanent armistice negotiated and announced within a week or two. Completely done. And then they're going to, and I think it's to say we will not see further fighting. There might be skirmishes, but that's it. It's going to be over.
I say frozen conflict for the next 4 years.
Oh, I think it will. That will probably be the armistice. I mean, the armistice that concluded the fall of France in 1940 was a frozen conflict zone too. The lines of control, froze.
You're very, very positive about this, which is nice because
because everybody's got the motivation. Okay. I mean, we already know that Trump he wants this war to end. The Ukrainians, they've been told you're cut off. You're not getting any more money or weapons. So they know they can't fight anymore. The Russians, they already have what they came for. And all they really need is that commitment that the Ukrainians don't join NATO, which they can't anyway because they don't qualify for NATO under NATO's own membership requirements. So it's kind of like it's all open doors. You just push on that's why I think it's going to happen. There's there's not a lot of flaming hoops anyone has to jump through.
I think the SMO goes on, and maybe we'll see a cessation of hostilities. I say September is the earliest we'll see a cessation to hostilities. September.
No way.
September.
We are not. There's not going to be fighting after April.
I hope you're right, but I personally just my instinct is that the Russians are not going to get.
The Russians want the
demands.
sanctions lifted. They want things to get back to normal. They want to enjoy
they don't
a
care.
closer relationship
they don't care
with Trump.
about the sanctions.
They care. Of course
they care, but not to the degree enough to force them into a corner.
No,
baby has not been painted into a corner.
No,
because the sanctions haven't done.
But all they have to
them.
agree
They've actually done well.
All they have to agree to is you got what you came for and you get to keep it.
Yeah,
and sanctions go away. I mean, what's not to like if you're Russia?
And congratulations to the Canadians. Mark Carney, formally sworn in as the new Canadian Prime Minister that they did not vote for. Good for them. Good. That's how we do democracy in 2025. You get a prime minister or a president that you didn't vote for, just like in Ukraine.
It's democracy.
It's democracy.
Or the Democratic Party nominee. Anyway.
That's right. All right. That's it, guys. We're gonna shut up. Have a great weekend. I hope Ted is right. I hope some amazing peace news breaks across the region in Russia and Ukraine, and then we come back Monday and we're like, oh my God, we're celebrating peace. And maybe by our 100th show, Ted, we're like, yay, celebrate peace. And people are like kissing each other in Times Square. Like sailors are kissing nurses in Times Square. But maybe we'll see. Or they get shoved into a train.
One way or the
other.
All
right. That's it, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you guys hit the like and subscribe button. We'll be back Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern. Thank you for being here. Have a great weekend, everybody. No show for me today because I have work to catch up on. Work that I haven't been paid for. It won't be paid for yet. But anyway, work nonetheless that I committed to do. So no Friday podcast. Do you guys have a DMZ?
We probably on tomorrow, Saturday. I'll post it on my socials.
Very
at Ted Rall, obviously. Boring.
Very good, guys. We'll see you.
Bye, Manila.
Monday.
See you Monday.
Bye, Ted. Bye, y'all.